Immanuel Presbyterian Church. Y'all are amazing. And your pastors are amazing. I've gotten to know Pastor Aaron. Hello. And Pastor Katie I've known for years. And thank you for loving her. She loves you. And God is in that love. And so I pray for your church in your ministries as you love one another and support one another. I want to share with you about a place where I felt the closest to God. And it's one of those thin places. Have you heard of that phrase, that thin place is where God just feels like you can almost touch God. You're so close to God. And for me, it happens to be the Grand Canyon. Any of you been there? We have some Grand Canyon people. It's awesome. Well, you may know, if you're a big fan of the Grand Canyon, that there's a section of it that's closed more than half the year because of all the snow that we get. So like from October to May, the north rim of the Grand Canyon is closed. And so this morning, I was curious, and I checked on the park website to see what the conditions were at the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Any guesses? Well, it says that the park roads, the trails, and the footpaths are snow-packed and icy. So a lot of people who go to the Grand Canyon, they go to the South Rim. It's very close to Las Vegas. And so like busloads of tourists will just come in and out of the South Rim. They jump out of the bus. They have 30 minutes, get a quick selfie with the canyon, get on the bus, and go to Las Vegas. The thing that I love about the North Rim is that it's really hard to get to. It takes like 2.5 more hours to get to than the South Rim. And part of that is because it is surrounded by the Kaibab Forest. The Kaibab Forest is a ponderosa pine forest, and it's one of the largest, like, continuous ponderosa pine forests in the country. So that surrounds the whole north rim of the Grand Canyon. So think about the condor and how it flies. And if it were to fly from the south rim to the north rim, anyone know the distance?
10 miles.
10 miles! Excellent. Not very far. But if you were to hike the canyon rim to rim, south rim to north rim, how many miles is that?
24.
Awesome! Love it. Anybody here hiked rim to rim? Nobody has done this yet. Hey, I went it 3 times, and it's spectacular. To start at the one rim, go down to the river, stay at Phantom Ranch, and go back out. You can do it in several days. It's really spectacular. If you drive from the south rim to the north rim, how many miles is that?
I don't remember.
Any guesses? Driving around that huge ponderosa pine forest.
260,
240?
Close, 220 miles. So when I was in college, when I went away to university, I sort of fell in love with Jesus. And in my getting to know Jesus, I got involved with the college ministry. The chaplain really took me under his wing. And so one day I was sitting with him in the chapel, just kind of figuring out the meaning of life, you know. I asked him what I should do with my life, and he just kind of looked at me. And he said, well, I don't know what you should do with your life, but maybe this summer you want to think about doing a Christian ministry in the national parks. Hey. So I applied, and I was placed at the north rim of the Grand Canyon for the whole summer. And so basically, I got to spend the summer hiking the Grand Canyon. And my roommate was a park ranger who had a cabin right on the rim of the canyon, watching the moonrise over the canyon. That was a thin place. And so my Christian ministry was to lead worship in the campground, and also in the lodge. And people came from all over the world. And oftentimes leading worship was asking everyone to look around them, look outside, and praise God. Because it was just so incredible to see creation there at the Grand Canyon. My time there in the forest really transformed me because I was born in Whittier, a Los Angeles area, and never really spent time in a forest ever in my life. And so hours I would spend hiking and walking and jogging those trails in the forest. And what I realized is that the forest is this huge community of trees. And they're in all these different stages of life. I looked into that, and it turns out that experts who study trees, they say there's 7 different stages of life for a tree, similar to the stages of human life. The first stage is infancy, the second, youth, the third, prime of life, the fourth, middle age, the fifth is a senior, the sixth is twilight, and the seventh is death. And as you walk through the Ponderosa Pine Forest, you can see every stage of life. You can see the way those baby trees just begin sprouting out of the earth. And then you can see the youthful trees and then the middle-aged trees. And you see how they start to lean on one another. That they all really are touching each other. Their branches and leaves crisscrossing. And that's just the stuff you can see above ground. We know that underground, there's a whole network of root systems interconnected. I learned this from the Smithsonian writer Richard Grant, who describes the forest. And he says that forests are alive and they're charged with wonder, that the trees actually communicate to one another. And they depend on each other. They have a web of relationships. He talks about the wise old mother tree, and that every forest has a wise old mother tree, and their job is to feed the saplings with liquid sugar, and to warn the other trees when danger approaches, and to look out for those reckless youngsters who take foolhardy risks with their leaf shedding and light chasing, their excessive drinking of that sugar water. And sometimes they drink too much and they die. Then there's those other trees called the crown princes, and they're the ones waiting for the old monarch trees to fall so they can take their place and have the full glory of the sunlight. And so all of that's happening in the forest, but it's in super slow motion. It's tree time. So the scientists have gone on to study this, and they have confirmed that trees are alert, they're social and sophisticated. They even have their own intelligence. They live in community. A community that some are calling the Wood Wide Web. Now the mother trees are the biggest, oldest trees, and they have the most connections. They're not always female trees, but they are nurturing, supportive, and maternal. You all have mother trees here at your church. Do all of you know this? You have 2 mother trees here. And their roots are so deep. They draw up the water and they feed it out to the little trees and the seedlings. They help the neighbor trees, sending them nutrients. And when the neighbor trees are struggling, the mother trees can detect the distress of the struggling trees. And they increase the flow of nutrients to the trees that are the most distressed. The church is a network, similar to that of the trees. The church is that mother tree that out its connections to the neighborhood, being sensitive to who is in distress, who needs more of our care and our attention. In our scripture today, there is someone in great distress. He is on a cliff. He is enchained. He is harming himself. The scripture says he is out of his mind. And I can't help but wonder, how did he get there? And who every day is letting him stay there? This man that the scripture said has an unclean spirit. What does that mean? In biblical times, there was no sense yet of the complexity of the brain and how our brain controls a lot of our emotional and behavioral functioning. So without that knowledge of the brain, neurobiology, mental health, biochemistry, in ancient times, they believed that spirits, unclean spirits, cause this disruption in someone's behavior. And so who knows what this man suffered with? But at the time, how did they treat him? They chained him in the tombs. Princeton professor Dr. Sonia Waters, she says that there are 8.1 million adults who experience this kind of mental, behavioral, and emotional struggle and have addiction at the same time. Oftentimes people will get addicted to substances because they're trying to treat their pain, self-medicate their pain, numb their pain. So in this opening scene in the scriptures, we see this man, a man for whom people call a demoniac. And the first thing we learn about this man is his address. What is his address? The tomb. Who wants to live there in that zip code? It's not good. It's not a good zip code to be in the tombs. Now think about what it means to be living in a place of death. What kind of life is that? Dr. Waters also says that the man's soul sickness caused him to be totally separated from other people. And the separation and isolation, did that contribute to his healing? No. We're never told in the gospel who put him there on the cliff in the tombs with the chains. But we have to wonder, how did he get there? How do people who have severe and chronic mental illness get to where they are? In the psychiatric ward? On the streets? How do people get to that point? Is it something suddenly that erupts? Or is it something that unfolds over time? How long had this man been living in the tombs? And how did Jesus respond to him? That is where we can find our guide for how to be church in a time where so many people are carrying the real pain of mental health challenges. What did Jesus say to the man? What did Jesus do?
He asked him his name.
Asked him his name. Jesus meets the man exactly where he's at and builds a relationship. We know that today, even though we are so much more advanced than they were in biblical times, we still put people in chains who have mental illness. Statistically, 74% of our state prisoners, 63% of federal prisoners, 76% of people in jail all have a mental health challenge. We're putting them in chains. We're putting them on the cliffs. Now remember that imagery I shared with you about the forests and the trees. In the scripture, there's no description of a tree providing shade in the tombs. But there were lots of rocks, but there were no trees. When you think of our jails and prisons and death rows, do you think of trees? Or do you think of rocks? Where is the mother tree in the tombs? Where is the church in the tombs? How can we as a church meet people where they are at? Or do we just want to leave them there in chains? When I think about mental illness in the Bible, I think about this story and the reality that it's so true that so many of us are very, very uncomfortable with people who have severe and chronic brain diseases. We can be so disturbed and feel so threatened and vulnerable that we maybe just want to forget about them. We just want to put them out of sight and out of mind. My father, my whole life, had severe and chronic bipolar disorder. So severe and chronic that he was never in treatment because his symptom primarily was anosognosia. Anosognosia is a symptom very common in bipolar and schizophrenia where there's no sense of awareness of your illness. It's a lack of insight. When I was a child, I thought he didn't love me. I thought I had done something wrong. I thought he was mean. I didn't know he was sick. It wasn't until after he died from a mental illness that I realized he tried the best he could. And he suffered terribly because we left him in the tombs. But it doesn't have to be that way. I hope that as followers of Jesus, we will not be afraid to get close to people who are struggling. Whether it's something very minor, everyday kind of symptoms that a lot of us have, someone who's down or sad, someone who's anxious, someone who's depressed, all the way to the more severe schizophrenia and bipolar, people who hear voices and are delusional. That we would not be afraid as Christians to meet people exactly where they are at. And like the mother tree, that we would be connected and sensitive to who needs support right now, who is feeling the most vulnerable, who's suffering and in pain the most right now. Let's send them some extra love. Let's send them some extra support because we are in tune and we are connected and we are paying attention. Such a beautiful image of how to be church. Thankfully, even though my father died from his mental illness, my brother, who has the same disease, is still alive. And it's because of the mother tree that he's connected to through his 12-step group that he goes to several times a week to support people, and his church that supports him and loves him. Even though my brother, part of his bipolar disorder, is thinking about suicide every hour, 7 times an hour. He cannot stop thinking about suicide. So he has to learn how to choose to live with every breath. And it's hard. And he needs to be connected to stay alive. The church can also help by giving support to people who are vulnerable because of injustice and oppression. We know that people who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, questioning, queer, asexual, are statistically at a higher risk for anxiety, depression, and suicide. This is because the church for too long has condemned them and shut them out. It is the work of Jesus to surround them with love. And your church, having just voted to be a church that reaches out from the mother root and connects and supports LGBTQIA, queer, this church is a church that supports people so that they will know that they are loved without a doubt. This church can save lives through your ministry, especially to young people who are queer. This is a work of recovery. And so as we think about what it means to be a church that cares for people, I want to always encourage you to think about the journey of recovery. Hope is possible. This man in the scripture recovers from his illness. You notice I didn't say he was cured. Oftentimes there is no cure, but there is a recovery, a day-to-day journey, one day at a time, being connected. Connected to Jesus, connected to the church, telling people the truth when you're not doing well, right? Letting people know that, hey, I need a little extra support right now. And making this a place where it's okay to take off the mask and to be real about who you are. In our scriptures, we see this human nature that when man with the unclean spirit was healed, he immediately says, hey, Jesus, I'm coming with you now. You're my ticket to freedom. I'm getting on that boat and we're leaving town. But Jesus says, you know, God's got bigger plans for you. Your recovery is such an inspiration that when you go and tell people that you're in recovery, they will be amazed and they will come to know me. That is your ministry. He says to the man, go home and go tell your friends the healing that you have experienced. And so I know people who talk to me who are in early recovery feel anxious and nervous about disclosing that to people. It's sort of a coming out of the closet, if you will. But in the scriptures, we can be encouraged that breaking the silence gives testimony to the power of God so that other people can be saved. Other people can be healed through you. And that is how our suffering is redeemed. When we allow God to use our life and use our stories to spread hope and healing. Friends, I want to hold you in prayer, and I look forward to our conversation after worship. And I want to encourage you that in this congregation, we do not have to be afraid. You do not have to be afraid. Like those people in the scripture who were afraid of this man, we don't have to be afraid. we can be amazed. We can choose to be amazed by a Savior who meets people right where they are at. We can be amazed at this invitation each one of us has to be healed from whatever it is that might be harming us. And so tonight, maybe you are on a journey, and maybe tonight there is something that you need to be healed from. Maybe it's the day where you take your last drink. You're done. You're not going to drink anymore. Today's your day. Tomorrow, day one of sobriety. Maybe this is the day where you're going to decide to Google the therapist that your insurance plan covers. And you're going to call tomorrow and make that appointment to see the counselor. Maybe today is the day where you're going to reach out to that friend who you suspect might need some extra support. I have a feeling that today is going to be an important day. That through you, healing will come. And that in the Spirit of Jesus, we do not need to be afraid. But we will be amazed. Maybe so. Thanks be to God.